Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in today and hope you're doing well. I'm Carol Ortenberg, the editor of NOSH, and I'm joining you from my home outside of Boston. Today, we're going to be speaking with Alex Marx, who is a director of category management at KeHe. Now, over the past few months, the business of working with distributors and retailers has greatly changed, some might say in lasting and permanent ways. And while much has been discussed about how to operate within these unusual times, today Alex and I want to also look towards the future and talk about what the remainder of 2020 might hold. So, with that, let's get started. Alex, first and foremost, how are you doing?
Hi, Carol. Nice to see you. I am doing well. I think I'm starting to figure out this new normal, whatever this looks like. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I'm settled in.
Well, what does your day to day look like working as a director of category management right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for KeHe, we break up our category management department into two different sections. One that we call category management, that's supplier facing, and that's the group that I'm on. And then we also have a supplier facing side of category management called growth solutions. So on our supplier facing side of category management, it's it's actually a lot of the conversations we're having are quite similar. So meaning the topics, we're still talking about innovation, we're still talking about supply chain issues and fill rate, and it's just that those conversations are done virtually.
We've heard a lot about how the consumer is changing their shopping behavior. How has that impacted the business and your work?
Yeah, COVID has it's totally flipped our business upside down. In some ways, it's been it's almost bittersweet to say this, but it's been positive. And in some ways, it's been quite troubling. So we really break up COVID into three different phases. First, there's uh, COVID proactive, and when I say three phases, I mean from a consumer behavior side. So COVID proactive, this was back in February, and this was when consumers were really starting to um, really take their wellness journey into their own hands with all the news going around. So they were looking at things like vitamins, herbs, hand sanitizer, and they were really starting to pluck those off the shelf. And then when we saw what we call COVID stock up, so this was where we saw heavy pantry stocking, and we saw categories like baby food, general merchandise categories, baking mixes, soups. All of our culinary at-home chefs that have been born through this process, grabbing up those categories. And then we see COVID normal. And it's so funny to say that because, I mean, we really don't totally know what COVID normal looks like. All we know is that there is this increased demand, and it calls for a much more hands-on yet digital virtual interaction with our suppliers and our customers.
Given that the situation is changing so quickly, how are you staying up to date on best practices and how you can best support your retail partners?
Yeah, staying up on best practices for us means staying up on the most recent innovations, honestly. Um, so that means still connecting with our data partners and Spins and Mintel and IRI. And we're all constantly talking about how the situation is evolving and then how we communicate that to our retail partners and our supplier partners. Again, even though the topics are really quite similar, the means of communication is totally different. So now we're communicating new items via PDF and PowerPoint, and hardly any of them are in person. And then even internally, our sales force, um, to get so many samples and to not be able to show those to their retailers, it's just the world's flipped upside down for them.
In all these communications with retailers, is there anything you're hearing about how brands can best support their retailers and be a real partner to them?
Yeah, absolutely. So ways that brands can support retailers and their distributor is, I mean, right now supply chain is more important than ever. So KeHe went through this phase where when we had that panic buying, our outbound logistics were struggling given the 200, 300, 400% increase in demand. But now we're seeing our inbound struggling a little bit, meaning we're having suppliers come late, which when they come late to us, of course, that affects to how they, or when they rather, show up to retailers. And the second piece that I'd add to that is around promotions. So promotions are such a tricky subject right now. We've had so many suppliers looking to pull promotions for these months. Given the uptick in demand, of course, it's either a supply issue, they know they just can't meet it, or B, some of them are wanting to pull promotions in the summer thinking, hey, this product is definitely going to sell. Maybe I don't need to get aggressive with my price. But promotions, I would argue, are more important than ever right now. As our retailers prepare for the fall months, or maybe even leading into the winter, we're really looking for suppliers to kind of maintain a steady pace with regards to promotions. So I'd say it's those two things.
Alex, you mentioned innovation, and I think that's a great point to delve into. We've heard from a lot of experts that brands should be undergoing SKU optimization and maybe focusing in on their core performers, but that can sometimes stifle the creativity that emerging brands are known for. Do you have any advice on balancing the two? And are retailers even looking for innovation right now?
Yeah, Carol, that's a great question. So balancing innovation along with SKU optimization kind of feels oxymoronic in nature, but it's so critical right now. So I'll answer the innovation piece first. So should suppliers be innovating? And the answer is a clear, bold, size 1000 font yes. If you don't innovate, somebody else will. And when the time comes when retailers open those floodgates and they're conducting category reviews, which, mind you, when August, September, or whenever that is, when they're looking at those category reviews, they're not just going to start picking up in the fall where they left off. They're gonna react to all that pent up demand. So again, to reiterate, innovating is so important right now. In terms of how do you balance that with SKU optimization, I think you just have to look yourself in the mirror and be honest and be aggressive with that as well. Actually, it was I saw this presentation on I think it was NOSH, where the founder of Late July said that she had the most challenging decision of her life, or one of them, to discontinue some products that her father, who is no longer with us, she had to make that decision in order to save her business. And I thought that was such a brave thing to say. And although it's really difficult, that's kind of the courage that everyone needs to find and do, is discontinue those products that aren't performing.
Now, we've all heard stories about consumers heading to the store and not being able to find their favorite products or finding holes on the shelf. Do you see retailers looking to new products and innovation to fill some of those voids?
Yeah, Carol, absolutely. Retailers are, the worst thing that can happen right now is having holes on your shelf. So of course, retailers are looking for item substitutes, and a lot of them are counting on KeHe to provide those item substitutes for them. So I would argue that it might be more important than ever to have product ready to go.
So we've touched on thinking about your innovation pipeline during this time. Do you have any other advice to brands about how to maybe use this time when they can't meet with buyers or aren't traveling for trade shows? How to use this time effectively and what they can do to help build their businesses?
Yeah, right now it's definitely not a sit and wait until July or August or the fall when the floodgates are going to open. There's so many different things you can do. Um, maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but I would imagine there's there's just a massive uptick in social media. So at the very least, it's buttoning up your social media, making sure that your game is really strong there. Doubling down on finding your tribe and speaking to them on a regular basis. And then it's also, you look at things like creating a promotional roadmap, and that goes for your retailer, distributor, really anybody. And even if you're not able to meet with retailer X or retailer Y and communicate that roadmap at that given time, just being ready, knowing when you're going to promote and that sort of thing, communicating all that is really critical.
Alex, speaking about meeting with buyers, KeHe had their holiday show coming up in June, and you've shifted that show to be a virtual trade show. Talk to me about what is a virtual trade show and what that experience will look like.
Our virtual trade show for KeHe is going to be similar in that it's going to be a buying show. So suppliers and retailers have the opportunity to negotiate deals and talk about price points back and forth, except it's just not going to be in person. What's really special about this show that we've changed in naming from the holiday show to Holidays of Hope is it's going to be a free show for one. We've asked suppliers to donate, and those donations will go to COVID impacted folks. And we've actually acquired over $100,000 so far. But in terms of how do you prepare for a virtual show compared to a show that's live, it's things like making sure your images are up to date, making sure your attributes are correct in our system. So if you're fair trade, making sure that that is present, those sorts of things.
We've seen a lot of trade shows canceled, from the Summer Fancy Food Show to Sweets and Snacks. And what I hear from brands is that they're worried about missing this opportunity for face-to-face interaction with their distributors and retail partners. Do you have any advice on how to maintain these connections while not being overbearing or like too nudgy?
Yeah, it's I don't think that the suppliers should really worry about being too nudgy. I mean, that's kind of their job. I think more than ever, I think they need to communicate via email. And then honestly, I think everybody needs to collectively embrace virtual meetings. I know that meeting with my suppliers virtually via Zoom or Google Hangouts it's it's much better than a phone conversation. So I think it's those little things that make communicating a little bit better during this.
Now, getting back to your own trade show, what are you guys hearing about the holiday season? What should brands be doing now to get ready for Thanksgiving and the winter holidays?
Getting ready for Q4 means being promotionally savvy during that time. I know I've said it earlier, but it's so important to have your promotions in place and be ready. And like, let's break that down a little bit. So why is it so important? Well, one, as a small and emerging brand, keep in mind that some of the really large brands, maybe with Wall Street dollars, they're not slowing down on promotions. So keep that in mind. Maybe what you're going up against if you are a smaller brand. And two, you look at the unemployment figures, and I don't want to turn this into an economic session, but just think about what has happened to consumers' wallets, and being able to kind of meet consumers in the middle during that time is really more important than ever.
Alex, it's interesting you mentioned brands with big budgets. There's been some reports that consumers are looking to the brands they know and that have been around for a while. Do you think there's still a place for emerging and natural brands? Are consumers still interested in these products?
Absolutely. I don't. I know that the Wall Street Journal had their best intentions when writing that, and I'm sure that some of the data does support conventional shining during some of the pantry stocking period. But new and emerging brands and the whole world of natural specialty is absolutely going to continue to thrive. So while I don't think there's, it's necessarily intentional fear mongering, I would really hope that new and emerging brands in the natural and specialty field, that they don't get discouraged by maybe a quick dip in sales.
Well, Alex, I think that's a positive note to end on. We at NOSH also see a bright future for emerging brands. Thank you so much for chatting with us today and really appreciate the insights.
Yeah, thanks, Carol. We really appreciate it too. Thanks for thinking of KeHe and for all the emerging small brands. Feel free to reach out to KeHe during this time. We definitely want to be a resource for you guys.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Carol.